Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for what I think will be not only an interesting discussion, but something of enormous consequence. Here's the bottom line. In a few hours, tonight at midnight, it is very likely that the United States government is going to shut down. And I want to just take a minute to explain why that is happening and how it is happening. In the U.S. Senate, there is a rule, it's been around for many, many decades, which says that in order to pass a budget, which is what we're considering right now, you need 60 votes. And I guess the people who put it in did that because they wanted bipartisanship. They didn't want one party just to be dictating the terms. That's what's gone on for decades. And under Democratic and Republican leadership in the past, that is what has happened. Agreements were reached in a bipartisan basis based on negotiations. People talked to each other. This year, we are in a different situation. Republicans, as everybody knows, controls the U.S. Senate, controls the U.S. House, and controls the White House. In other words, they are running the government. But what is happening now, which has never happened before, is they are not sitting down and negotiating. Yesterday, Trump met with the Democratic leadership, the Republican leadership, said hello to each other. It wasn't really a negotiation. So as of this point, Democrats have had no input into the process at all. Now, what Republicans want is to pass what is called a clean CR. In other words, maintaining the status quo. And some of you may say, well, what's the problem? You know, it's not bad, it's not good, we'll maintain the status quo. Here's why that is an awful idea and why all of us are opposed to that. In the last year, as many of you know, under Trump's big, beautiful bill, which to my mind was one of the worst pieces of legislation passed in modern history, under that bill, 15 million people on Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act will be thrown off of health care. A number of studies out there have suggested that up to 50,000 Americans a year will die because they are no longer able to go to the doctor. Very shortly, you are going to be receiving notices from your insurance companies that your rates, your insurance premiums, are going up by, on average, some more, some less, 75%. Yeah, you heard that correctly, 75%. Now, right now, we have a broken healthcare system. Nobody can afford healthcare. You're ready for a 75% increase in your insurance premiums. You're not, nobody is. On top of all of that, you got a HHS, Health and Human Services Secretary now, who's trying to undermine vaccine protocol, one of the great developments in modern science, keeping our kids healthy. On top of that, there is a massive move in this country to authoritarianism, and we'll go into that in a moment, where you have a president who doesn't believe in the Constitution, doesn't believe in the rule of law, lies all of the time. Just today, gave a speech to the generals. Hey, generals, it might be a good idea to start invading American cities to get practice of how you can function in a warlike situation. President today. So that is where we are. And what I'm going to do now is give it over to some of the strongest members of the United States Senate, doing a great job, each and every one. Talk briefly, we'll have a discussion. We've got some questions that you have already sent in. We'll try to answer them. Senator Warren, Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Senator Sanders, for pulling us all together and everybody who's here. Look, this is a righteous fight. There is no fight better than this fight right now, because this is a fight about healthcare that touches every single person in this country. Our healthcare system is broken. It's been broken for a long time. You and I have talked about that for a long time. It was broken before Donald Trump showed up. But last spring, the Republicans, and only the Republicans, voted to take away healthcare from 15 million Americans, voted to raise costs for millions and millions more. And now those bills are starting to come due. They basically want to take about $1 trillion out of the healthcare system. And what was a broken system is a system that will literally start to implode. That means we're going to see rural hospitals close. Heck, we're going to see some other hospitals close. We're going to see community health centers that are already starting to close. We're going to see folks who are just going to close up their medical practices. And understand this, when that happens, it doesn't just happen for the people who originally had Medicaid or who originally had ACA subsidies. It happens for everybody. It all goes away. So here we are now. We have to have a way to keep the government funded. We are bearing down on a deadline, just like Bernie said, and it takes 60 votes in the Senate to do that. So if the Republicans want our votes, now Donald Trump has told them, just go on it your own. I don't know if he doesn't do math or what, but he said go without us. But if the Republicans want our vote, then the answer is we want something on health care. We want to protect access to health care for millions of people across this country. And we're willing to get in the fight for that because we've had it. We understand that we don't have as much power as we want, but that's not the same as having no power at all. So we intend to use the power we have right now to help lower costs for tens of millions of people across this country and make sure they have access to health care. Fight number one right now. That's us.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Jeff Merkley. Jeff Merkley is the senator from Oregon.
Well, President Trump and the Republican team are driving up the cost of health care to a point that many Americans are not going to be able to afford it. That is a horrendous factor. Either you pay a lot more or you can't afford it at all and you don't have health insurance. That's issue number one that we're addressing with the Democratic alternative. You know, Republicans are in charge of everything. They have the keys to the kingdom. They have the House, the Senate, the Oval Office. They have a Supreme Court handing the president more power. They're in charge. And in charge, they decided their priority was a families lose, billionaires win agenda. And at the heart of it was destroying health care for Americans across the land. And in my state, the projected increase is about 68%, about $1,300 a person. And you can imagine how devastating that is to families on limited means. Second issue, very important, is we took an oath to the Constitution. And the Constitution assigns the power of the purse to Congress. But President Trump, through a series of tactics, slowing down, freezing, impoundments, slow walking funding until the end of the fiscal year and then saying, oops, the fiscal year ended, has been stealing the power of the purse and creating an effective line item veto. The Supreme Court's already weighed in, said a line item veto is unconstitutional. So we're calling on our Republican colleagues to stand with us together to defend the Constitution and the separation of powers. Now, we see many other authoritarian actions that we'd like to address through legislation, but we can't get that legislation up because we're in the minority. But what we can do is use the power that Bernie's referred to and Elizabeth's referred to say, hell no, we're not going to vote for a continuing resolution that is partisan and destroys health care. And hell no, we're not going to vote for a continuing resolution, a budget, if you will, a spending bill that can be undone by the president in an effective line item veto.
Thanks very much, Jeff. Chris Murphy, senator from Connecticut.
Bernie, thanks so much for bringing us together here today. What's wild is that the government is going to shut down tonight, and the Republicans in the House of Representatives aren't even here. They're not in session. They're home, which tells you everything you need to know about how unserious Republicans are about what's about to happen. They're going to let the government shut down. They're not even in Washington, right? Because ultimately they don't care about the impact on people. And they already showed us that. Because earlier this year, as you mentioned, they passed a piece of legislation that's the most massive transfer of wealth from the poor and the middle class to the rich in the history of the country. So the first thing to know is that they're just not serious about a negotiation. They're not serious about opening the government. But the second thing to understand is that the priorities that we have at the table, and they need Democratic votes in order to keep the government open, man, they're pretty reasonable. They're pretty reasonable. What are we asking for? Just don't increase people's premiums by 75% this fall. We're not asking to fix every problem in a broken healthcare system. We're just saying don't make it worse. What's the other thing we're asking for? Obey the law. I just want a president who's not lawless every day. I just want a president who believes that he's bound by the Constitution, who doesn't think he's a king, right? So I think this is a really grave moment because people are going to get hurt by a shutdown, but they're also going to get hurt if their premiums go up by 75% when everything else is going up, the cost of car repairs, the cost of food, the cost of school supplies. And people are going to get hurt by a government that's not lawless, because if you can't speak your mind in this country without repercussions, that comes with a cost as well. So I really appreciate you bringing us together, because I think a lot of people, man, they're familiar with the shutdown drama. They think they're all the same. Every single shutdown is just a repeat of the last one. No, this is different. This one's different. We've never had a majority party, the Republicans, refusing to negotiate. We've never had healthcare costs about to go up this quickly when so many families are hurting. We've never had a president this lawless. So it's a different moment, which is why it's so great you're bringing us together.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Tina Smith, Senator from Minnesota. Tina?
Thank you, Bernie, and I'm so glad to be here with all of our colleagues and all of you. So your grocery bills are going up, your utility bills are going up, and your healthcare costs, especially health insurance premiums, are going through the roof. And the reason this is happening is because for the last year, Donald Trump and Republicans have spent all of their energy not watching out for you, not trying to make sure that your life was better, but they've spent their time figuring out how to rig our economy so that the wealthiest individuals and the biggest corporations do just great, and the rest of us, literally, are left paying the price. And now here we are, a few hours from the federal government running out of money, and Republicans who are in charge of the White House, in charge of the Senate, in charge of Congress, are refusing to do anything to stop this from happening. They're refusing to negotiate with Democrats, and in fact, they are threatening us with all sorts of bullshit stuff, trying to intimidate us. So we're here today to say that we're not going to be intimidated. We are not going to be bullied. What we want is to work with whoever will work with us to help lower health insurance premiums for people, to help make sure that we're not cutting funding for cancer research, and to make sure that if we pass a budget, that it's not just a blank check. As my friend Chris Van Hollen says, it's not just a blank check for Donald Trump to do whatever he wants. That is what this fight is about. That is why this fight is worth having right now.
Thanks very much, Tina. Speaking of Chris Van Hollen, there he is from Maryland.
Well, thank you, Bernie, Tina, and colleagues, and thank all of you who are paying such close attention to this, because it is so important for our country. And I want to tell you what we're for. We're for a proposal that keeps the government open. But we also don't want to give Donald Trump, a lawless president, a blank check. Our Republican colleagues, they're willing to contract out all of their responsibilities under the Constitution to Donald Trump. We're not willing to do that because we've seen the lawless actions he's taken. So, for example, he did disrupt clinical trials for cancer patients. That was illegal, but he did it even though it harmed lots of people. So we want to put up some safeguards and guardrails to prevent that from happening. We also do want to address rising prices in the country. And, you know, Donald Trump said he wanted to do that too. I mean, he said on day one he was going to bring down prices. Not only has he not brought them down, he's made them worse. And if we don't address this ticking time bomb that is going to make healthcare costs for 20 million Americans go higher, and frankly, every American's healthcare costs are going to go up because 4 million Americans are going to lose access to their affordable care altogether. When they show up in the emergency room, you know who ends up paying the bill? Everybody else, because everyone else's insurance rates go up. So when they passed what they called the big beautiful bill, which was beautiful if you're a billionaire, it really stunk if you were anybody else. They cut Medicaid. You know what else they did? They extended the tax cuts for the richest Americans. They let them go on forever. You know the tax cut that they let lapse? The one that helps working families afford health care. That's the one that they let lapse, while they made permanent the one for billionaires. So we are opposed to their plan. We are in favor of our plan. We want Republicans to vote for our plan. Keeps the government open, does not provide Donald Trump with a blank check, and gets at these rising costs and prices the American people are facing, especially right now in the area of healthcare.
Chris, thank you. Peter Welch from Vermont.
Well, people have been watching can see that we're in a fighting mood. And I'll tell you why. It is a ripoff what is going on, this transfer of wealth with the billionaire tax cut and then cutting health care to pay for it. And what is more important to all of our families than having some confidence that if a person we love, a child, a partner, gets sick, we can get the care that they need? This has been a Republican agenda, Donald Trump agenda, where as though you reform health care by taking health care away from people. The fewer people on Medicaid, they presume means they won't get sick, but they will. And we have got to defend health care and stop taking it away from people. And the second thing that we have to stand up for is acknowledging that we've got a president who is lawless, who is trampling the constitutional rights of the people of this country, who is disregarding the responsibilities and the independent authority of Congress. And we have to deal with a Republican majority that is willing to cede that responsibility to give their authority to the president when he's using it to take away health care. And by the way, on the cost, Bernie, you mentioned, but in Vermont, a Vermont family making $82,000 family of four, their premiums can go up $20,000 a year. Think about that. Outrageous. So we're here to fight for you and against authoritarianism. Thank you.
All right, thanks. All right, let's open it up for discussion. Let me start off on this one. I don't know how to phrase it here, but Trump has given $1 trillion in tax breaks to the top 1%. He's going to raise health insurance premiums by 75% on average for 20 million families, throwing thousands of people, millions of people off of Medicaid. And by the way, as I said earlier, studies out there show that tens of thousands of Americans every single year are going to die as a result. That's what we're talking about. We don't act. People in every state in this country by the thousands are going to die. So my simple question, it would seem to me if I were a politician, why would I want to give tax breaks to billionaires who have never had it so good and cut programs that working people desperately need? What is his motive? What does he think he's going to do? How does he plan on getting away with something which is so horrendously unpopular and horrible? Who wants to take a shot at that one?
I'll take a shot, but I want to start with the fact that what we're seeing is a huge betrayal because Trump campaigned on helping families. And then what did we see when in the rotunda of the Capitol he was sworn into office? Did we see standing behind him champions for health care for American families? No. Did we see champions for child nutrition or that research, that medical research for children's cancer or dementia or so many other diseases? No. Did we see labor advocates trying to get an honest day's pay for an honest day's work? No. We saw billionaires standing behind the president. And that is the vision that he has been operating on from day one of his administration is we are going to screw families in order to fund tax breaks for billionaires. Child nutrition, cut it, tax breaks for billionaires. Healthcare, cut it, tax breaks for billionaires. Run up $30 trillion in additional debt. Why? Tax breaks for billionaires. So why? Because that's what he identifies with. He views himself as a very successful entrepreneur. Of course, there's many questions about that until he actually finally did become successful as a corrupt president in a fashion we have never seen in the history of the United States, promoting crypto coins while in office. But that's who he is, that's who he's fighting for, and we're fighting for the families.
But you know, I just want to add, Jeff, you've got the half of it, the billionaire half. You're exactly right on that. But look at the other half, too. He wants to lie about who's getting help right now. So we sit here in Washington and we talk about how there are going to be at least 10 million people kicked off Medicaid. You know, there are a lot of people around this country who say, well, I don't take Medicaid, right? That's for somebody else. That's not for me. And they lie about who gets Medicaid. So first of all, you may be taking Medicaid, getting help from Medicaid, but it's just called something else in the state that you live. It's called Sooner Help, or it's called Mass Health, or it's called Husky.
Dinosaur.
What?
Dr. Dinosaur in Vermont.
Why am I not surprised? But it's got different names. So there are a lot of folks who are right in the target area who don't even recognize they're in the target area. And that's why it's so important to just stop for 1 minute and talk about what Medicaid is. Look, we make a decision as a nation that we don't know whose niece is going to have the baby that's going to run up $1 million in medical bills before he's a month old. We don't know whose grandma is going to outlive her savings and end up in a nursing home and need help. We don't know whose neighbor's going to get hit by a bus and needs to live with a home health aide or needs a wheelchair. We don't know who's going to get hit, so we all pitch in some nickels. So if it's your family, there's some protection there. That's all Medicaid is. And what the Republicans are trying to do is say, no, we're not going to take anything away from you. We're just going to take it away from those other guys. And that's the other part of this that we have to be willing to talk about. What the Republicans have put together is going to take away health care from people with Medicaid. It's going to take away health care access or help from people who are getting help paying for their private health insurance. It's going to put the squeeze on employers. It's going to hit everyone. So wherever you are, this is not a problem for those people. It's a problem for everyone.
Which takes me to one of the questions that we've got. More than 2/3, this is the question from Lisa in North Carolina. Lisa, thanks very much. My father is in a nursing home memory care unit, and Medicaid covers the majority of his bill every month. Is there a chance he will lose this coverage, and if so, will he be kicked out? End of quote from Lisa of North Carolina. Who wants to talk about the impact of these cuts, not only on individuals, you're losing your insurance, but on nursing homes, community health centers, rural hospitals? Who wants to take a shot at that?
You know, I'd be glad to talk about that. You know, 2/3 of folks in nursing homes are paid for by Medicaid. And a lot of folks don't understand that. But all of our kids, those who have a seriously disabled child and they love that child to pieces, they can't raise that child without Medicaid. And it's direct and indirect because the pressure is on to cut. And what that means is some of these nursing homes are going to close because they're not getting paid. So even if you're still on Medicaid, you may not have a nursing home to go to. And that, of course, we know is happening to our community hospitals already. So you have an approach here by the Republicans that is about destroying the healthcare system. And that's what the bottom line here is. And I just am astonished that we're actually in a Congress where the discussion is not about improving healthcare. It's not about lowering costs, dealing with drug prices. It is about cutting away people's access to healthcare by taking away their insurance.
I want to pick up on a point that Jeff made regarding who's getting hurt and who's getting helped. And it's absolutely true that millions of Americans who use Medicaid are going to get hurt, and a lot of people don't know who they are. But millions of Americans who don't have Medicaid are going to be hurt by these rising healthcare prices, because in addition to the 20 million who are part of the health exchanges, when people lose access to their health insurance altogether, it does drive up healthcare costs for everybody. And you're going to all be seeing in a couple weeks notices about premium increases. And my bet is that everybody in America is going to see those premiums going up. And it's all to benefit the billionaires. And as Jeff said, if you remember Inauguration Day, what the president said, he said this was going to be a golden age for America. What he meant was it was going to be a golden age for his billionaire friends who were behind him, people like Elon Musk.
People who have the gold, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Like Elon Musk, who
We didn't know he was literally going to plaster the Oval
right.
Office with
so,
gold
So
at the
literally a golden age for people who are already very rich. You're going to get even richer at everybody's else's expense. And of course, one of the people who is cashing in big time is Donald Trump and his family. I mean, we've never seen a more corrupt administration in American history in terms of their crypto schemes and their crypto scams, selling out American interests for his own personal profit. So I do think at this moment it's important to focus, as we are, on who Donald Trump is for, the billionaires and the big corporations, and who he is leaving behind. He's leaving behind and betraying the very people he said he wanted to help.
Well, and Bernie, I want to just, maybe this is a good moment to debunk this argument, this so-called argument that the Republicans have been putting out there. They're sort of desperately trying to figure out how to blame us when they're in charge of everything for what's about to happen. So what they're saying is that we're fighting to preserve, we're fighting because we want to make sure that their term, illegal aliens, get health insurance. So I just want to be clear, okay, that's a lie. They do not want to talk about how they are raising healthcare costs for people, taking away people's health insurance, and so they are trying to change the subject. It is against the law right now for a person who is an undocumented person to get Medicare, to get Medicaid, to buy their health insurance on the health insurance exchanges in your state or nationally. So this is a classic trying to change the subject, trying to scare people. It is not true, and we should just be really clear about that as we think about what is really at stake in this moment, which is whether you are going to be ending up paying 75% more for your health insurance premiums because Republicans refuse to work with us to solve that problem.
I also want to be really clear about something too, and I looked it up. The Medicaid program in Vermont is actually called Dr. Dinosaur.
You doubted us?
I doubted. It sounded
was like, I need
ridiculous.
to
That sounded ridiculous.
We
That sounded
believe in
ridiculous, Bernie.
fact-checking here. It was
didn't
so
sound right.
ridiculous. You should have
Yeah.
known.
It's
Makes medical assistance in Minnesota sound sort of,
Yeah.
I don't know, Minnesota
Well,
nice.
So I want to go back to Tina's though. Tina, tell us again, exactly how many undocumented people living in the United States have access to Medicaid?
0 people. 0 people.
Well, that's a
And-
problem.
But that's the whole, we just have to keep saying this enough because this is the whole idea. They want to treat it as if it's a scam. And this is health insurance for your grandma.
That's right.
This is health insurance for your neighbor. This is health insurance for that baby with multiple medical problems.
And I just want to reiterate a point that Senator Welch made. The system is already broken,
That's right.
okay? We did, the ranking member of the Health Committee, Health, Education, Labor, and we looked at nursing homes. Oh, my God. It is that we treat the elderly and the disabled the way we do. Never forget, I was in a meeting in Burlington, Peter. Guy gets up, town meeting, he said, I got to tell you something. Close person to me said, if you send me back to that nursing home again, before you do that, kill me. I will not, I cannot deal with that.
Terrible.
These nursing homes all over the country are understaffed, food is inadequate, et cetera. And let's be clear, when you cut Medicaid, what was the number, Peter, that you quoted a moment ago? What percentage of, what's 2/3 of funding for nursing homes come from Medicaid?
Yeah.
I've long been, along with everybody here, an advocate for community health centers because we think primary care is enormously important. Everybody should be able to come to a doctor. Be devastating for community health centers. Make it harder for you to walk into a community health center. And to pick up on Tina's point, what demagogues always do is try to change the subject and blame a powerless minority.
That's right.
Okay, you can't afford housing, you can't afford healthcare. You know who it is? It's the transgender community. You didn't know that, but that's who it really is. And you can't afford healthcare. We're trying to save you money by getting those illegal people off of Medicaid. It's a lie. What they don't want to acknowledge is what many people here have just said. Simple reality. $1 trillion in tax breaks to the richest people, 1%, who have never, ever had it so good, and you pay for that by cutting Medicaid and making it harder for people to pay for the Affordable Care Act.
And yesterday, Bernie, the vice president goes out on the lawn at the White House. Now, remember, the vice president casts the tie-breaking vote. in order to have this big, beautiful bill pass that is doing all this devastation. So he's right at the heart of this. He's like, his vote secured the fact that 15 million people are going to lose health care. His vote secured the fact that all sorts of ordinary families just having child nutrition are going to lose that because they want to fund tax breaks for billionaires. So he's the one who came out on the lawn and keeps reporting the big lie that Tina's referring to. Let's have an honest conversation. We know that the healthcare system can be improved. You know, the cost of drugs in the United States is so much higher than any other developed country. Well, everybody in America understands we put more into the R&D of drugs than any other nation. We should get the best price in the developed world, not the worst price. That'd be something in a bipartisan way we should fight for. And there's area after area we could improve health care, but this administration comes in and says, well, if we're the billionaires, we don't need to improve health care because they buy, you know, platinum-plated plans. They probably have personal physicians following them as they jet set around the world. We don't have to worry about that. Those families out there struggling, well, just too bad because they're not in our circle. This is a horrendous vision for America. We have a better vision as Democrats. And it's not families lose, billionaires win. It's not the red carpet for the billionaires and the red tape for struggling families. It is families thrive and billionaires pay their fair share.
All right, Ed Markey joined us late. Ed, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, thank you, Bernie. And who voted against Medicaid on the floor of Congress? Republicans. Who voted no on Medicare on the floor of the Congress? Republicans. Who voted no against the Affordable Care Act? The Republicans. Who voted to repeal all of these Medicaid and Affordable Care Act, and Medicare, and NIH, funding? Republicans. So they harbor an ancient animosity towards all of these programs. And they've been waiting for Donald Trump, their hero, to finally arrive, to give them the capacity to begin to strip all of these medical benefits off of the books. And how'd they get on the books? Well, in 1900, life expectancy in the United States was 48 years of age. And then the progressive movement started. Clean air, clean water, vaccines, Medicare, Medicaid, coverage for everyone. And the Republicans have always resented the fact that those programs protect every family, every family. And so, J.D. Vance, he just tells the big lie, to attempt to repeal it. But Elizabeth and I in Massachusetts, here's what's at stake. 300,000 people are going to lose their health insurance with these Medicaid cuts. 300,000 people. 337,000 people are going to see their health care premiums skyrocket, 50%, 75%. That's 637,000 people just in our state. And of course, it's tens of millions of people across the whole country who are going to be affected by this, and it's the Republican attack. And so GOP has really always stood for get old people, How do we get at Social Security? How do we get at Medicare? How do we get at Medicaid? And just to follow up on what Peter said and you said, Bernie, 2/3 of people in nursing homes are paid for by Medicaid. But here's the other factor. Half of them have Alzheimer's. Half of them. And that's Medicaid. How do we take care of Alzheimer's patients in America? It's Medicaid. How do we take care of grandma and grandpa? It's Medicaid. And what they're doing is they're putting a bullseye on Medicaid, okay? And so for these families in our country who don't merely even think about it, what the Republicans are being honest about, they're saying the quiet thing out loud again. We hate these programs. We've always hated them. And we're going to come for them, and we're coming for you and your families. And so he thinks that people he thinks people are stupid. He thinks people don't understand what's going on. They may be old, they may be sick, they may be minorities, but they're not stupid, okay?
All right.
They know what's going on right now.
Time is running out. Who wants to help us wrap it up? Brilliant last parting words. See, he's a modest guy. Brilliant. Here it is. Brilliant words.
You're going to end this, Bernie. You're going to end this, but I'm going to tee up. Your first question is the most important. Why does Trump think he's going to get away with this? Trump thinks he's going to get away with this, which is just wildly unpopular, throwing 17 million people off their health care, jacking people's costs up by 75%, closing nursing homes. He thinks he's going to get away with it because at the same time, he's trying to crush dissent in this country. He's trying to shut up people who criticize him. He's trying to threaten us, right, members of the Senate, with imprisonment because they dare to oppose him. And he's betting that it's going to work. He's betting that at the same time that he's doing all these unpopular things, throwing people off their health care in order to enrich his Mar-a-Lago buddies, he's also going to be successful in repressing people from protesting him. And that's how we stop him. We stop him by showing him that he can't actually shut the American people up. He can't actually stop people from seeing the corruption. We'll have an opportunity in a couple weeks on August 18th to have, October 18th, to have millions of people, maybe the biggest day of protest in the history of this country. And so to me, that first question is the most important, Bernie. He thinks he can get away with this because he thinks people aren't going to either notice or he thinks people are going to be too scared to speak up. But if we speak up and the pressure mounts on Republicans to do the right thing for their political careers, not throw people off their health care before the next election, well, then we have a chance to improve people's lives.
All right, final thoughts, Elizabeth?
So I want to pick up on where Chris is, but I don't want to wait till October 18th. I'm ready to go right now.
You're right.
No, it's true. This is the call to action right now.
Yep.
And I know you hear over and over, call your reps, call your senators, make some noise, get online, and it's all true. But now is the time to do this. Because here's the deal, and this is true whether you live in a state represented by Democrats or a state represented by Republicans or a state represented, what were they called again in Vermont? The moose doctors? The dinosaurs. Whatever you're represented by. It is really, really important that you make your voice heard. This is a moment when you can do it. Come out on October 18th, but come out right now. Come out and speak out. Speak out to the Republicans. Speak out to the Democrats. Speak out to the independents. Speak out to the dinosaurs and say, don't take away my health care. Support the people who are in this fight, and that's the Democrats. Because the more you do that, the more chance we've got of actually winning this fight. And you know, it won't fix everything. It is a broken healthcare system, but the win matters. We build on this win, and then there's the next win, and the next win, and the next win. Because ultimately, this is the moment we start to prove to Donald Trump the power is not at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. It is not with the heads of his agencies. It truly lies with the people if the people use their voices.
Bernie, if I could just pick up on a point that Chris made, which is, and everybody can see this in real time. Anybody who's watching what President Trump is doing knows that he's not focused on bringing prices and costs down for the American people. What is he focused on? He is focused on grabbing more and more power. He wants to take away people's First Amendment rights. He wants to use the power of the government to crack down on dissent. He wants to deny people due process rights, literally lock them up or disappear them without due process of law. He wants to ignore the laws that we put down that says you need to spend this money on clinical trials for cancer patients, for example. He wants to ignore that. So if you look at what he's doing every day, he is consolidating more and more power. And as Chris said, he wants to use that to squash dissent. So we do need to continue to speak up individually and collectively. We also need to call out all of those people and law firms and businesses who are capitulating and caving into Donald Trump, because when they appease him, they're appeasing a bully. He will take more and more and more. And when they appease him, they put all of our rights at risk. So this is a moment for everybody to step up.
Tina Smith, wrap it up.
Elizabeth said this at the beginning, and I want to just end with this, which is that, you know, we may not be in power, but we are not powerless, and you are not powerless either. This whole administration is going about the job of trying to convince you that your voice doesn't matter, that there's nothing that you can do. They're trying to wear you out so that you just give up. And that's actually how we lose democracies. But I know that's not going to happen here because I see it in Minnesota. I see it all over the country. People understanding that this is their moment to do whatever they can. You can't do everything, but there's one thing that you can do. I see it in Bemidji, Minnesota, with people standing on the overpasses and holding their signs. I see it in people standing in front of the ICE buildings and peacefully protesting folks being hauled off by masked government officials to God knows where. You have the power, just as we all do here, to make a difference, and we're doing everything we can to make that.